Has been incredible, and we will be forever grateful. This turnout is amazing. As we gather in this moment of reflection and grief, I'm reminded of the countless ways my dad impacted our lives. He was not just my father, but a friend, a brother, a son, and someone who was always looking to crack the next witty joke. His love, wisdom, and humor left a lasting mark on those he interacted with. And today I want to share some stories and memories that capture the essence of who he was and celebrate a life well lived. Before I begin with the eulogy, I'd like to share a short note written by my mother. So Jim and I were married for 30 years, and although our divorce was final last year, I am eternally grateful for the happiness and the memories we shared. 2 amazing children, the privilege of being a full-time mom, a lifetime of memories of travel, laughter, early morning soccer matches, karate tournaments, Christmas on the boat, summers in Catalina. Our lives were a dream come true from this girl from Raytown, Missouri. I told Jim that I was forever grateful for the life that he provided us, and it was something I never could have imagined as a young girl. Jim lived an incredible life, and he accomplished significantly more than most people. After the sudden death of our son, James, we shared the worst pain a couple could face. I will always focus on the love we shared, our wonderful boys we were blessed with, and the beautiful memories we made. I'm comforted knowing that Jim is in heaven with our son and his dad, Grandpa Jack, and according to James's version of heaven, they're at the all-you-can-eat buffet walking on the clouds. Rest in paradise, Jimmer. Thank you, Mom. So now I'll give the eulogy. It's my honor to give this, and I'm going to weave in my own reflections. So I'll start where my dad's journey began on May 6th, 1962 in Cupertino, California. My dad was the third of 4 children born to Jack and Darlene Shirey. My dad would periodically tell me that throughout his life he respected his father more than anyone in the world and had a very deep sense of gratitude for the love that his parents gave him. My dad always emphasized how grateful he was for them working so hard to give him the upbringing that they gave him. And that's definitely where my dad got his entrepreneurial drive, was from my grandpa. My dad cherished his childhood in Cupertino and found no shortage of trouble and antics to get into. One of my dad's earliest successes in life came when he was 10 years old. He and a few friends successfully organized a protest in the Cupertino area to voice the local children's outrage over a price increase in Slurpees at 7-Eleven. The protest grew in size to nearly 30 other kids, and my dad's picture and his story were written in the local newspaper, which we have a copy on one of the tables there. And my dad also started his first company when he was 13 years old, detailing and servicing cars. And this was the beginning of a nearly 50-year entrepreneurial journey. My dad went on to graduate from Cupertino High School in 1980 and had numerous aspirations at the age of 18. He originally considered being a lawyer, which would have suited him very, very well given his fervor for engaging in arguments and making his points well known. He started taking classes at De Anza Community College when his father, my Grandpa Jack, gave him a call halfway through his first semester. Grandpa Jack had just started a new business venture and needed additional help getting the business off the ground. My dad drove down to San Diego for the first time in his life and instantly knew this would be his home forever. My dad jumped fully in, and Mission City Auto Auction began to flourish. Soon, the entire Shirey family was working at Mission City, and the business quickly became the largest auto auction in San Diego. Some of my dad's proudest moments came from his 20 years of working and growing Mission City. He would light up regaling me with stories of their Thursday night auctions, finding new car dealers, managing the details of a very large company. And at its height, Mission City had dozens of employees and sat on a 20-acre plot of land out in San Ysidro. They were selling around 400 cars a week. And the entire Shirey family played a role in growing the business and contributed to its success. After nearly 20 years of incredibly hard and demanding work, my dad and the family sold Mission City in 2000, and my dad entered a temporary season of retirement. Several other major life events occurred in the late 80s and early 90s that changed the trajectory of my dad's life. In the late 80s, my grandfather called my dad and asked him to start exploring neighborhoods where the Shirey family could settle down more permanently. Grandpa Jack called the next week and asked my dad to check out the Coronado Caves, which was a new Merino community that he'd heard good things about. The caves would remain home for most of the Shirey family members throughout the next 4 decades and even into today. My dad loved living in the Cays and the close-knit community it gave him. He loved this yacht club and the poker group. It meant the world to him. And then most notably during this decade, my dad met my mom in 1991 on a blind date. My dad knew after the first hour of the date he had met his wife and the woman he would remain married to for nearly 3 decades. My mom and dad built an incredible life together and gave my brother and me an upbringing the rest of the world cannot imagine. An upbringing filled with unconditional love, support, and encouragement. And in the year 2000, my dad also bought his beloved 43-foot Michelson spearfishing boat, the Wheel C, and the turnout from the Wheel C crew is awesome. For those of you who knew my dad well, there's no doubt in our minds the happiest place for him to be was on the deck of the Wheel C with a rum and coke, sitting at the helm, watching the ocean and spending time with family and friends. My dad built a lifetime of memories on board Wheel C, and I could talk for hours about the countless adventures and happiness that our family experienced on board. So thank you, Peace Soli. And as many of you know, my dad was also an avid racing fan. So some of his most joyful moments in his life took place in the Shelby Cobra parked outside. I unfortunately never got to see him racing it, but I heard the epic story from the 1998 and 1999 Tijuana Grand Prix. And while the TJ Grand Prix is no Indy 500, it certainly was to my dad. And likely one of the reasons he held on to the car even after racing. So I want to thank my uncle and my aunt and everyone for getting it ready, and it was awesome having it here. He would have loved seeing that here. I'd like to share this really short story from my dad's crew chief, Tim Gantz, from his racing days. So this is from him. I was the crew chief for your dad. I built the Cobra for your dad's race team and also worked with your dad at Mission City Auto Auction. I was with him all of his racing career. The year was 1998 and we were leading in points for the championship of the Baja Grand Prix, a series we ran in the Cobra in Mexico and the US. We were at the Tijuana Grand Prix in the second to last race of the year. Everything was going well and the race started great, and about 20 laps in, your dad was leading. Your mom was standing next to me and had a hold of my arm as she was incredibly nervous. I kept telling Sue, he's good, he knows what he's doing. Your dad was coming up on lap traffic and I told him to be careful passing, which he was. A lap car had dumped what he thought was water on the ground leading up to that turn, and I jumped on the radio and said, water on the track, be careful. Your dad was decelerating from about 120 miles an hour, and he hit what we thought was water, but was actually an antifreeze, which is illegal to run in a race car. The car went out of control, and there was nothing your dad could have done differently to avoid it. He hit the wall at 70 or 80 miles an hour, a very hard hit, and I got on the radio and said, Jim, you okay? No response. Your mom tightened her grip on my arm and kept asking me if Jim was okay. It seemed like forever before your dad came on the radio and said, yeah, I'm okay. I'm gonna go sit in the motorhome. Your dad was so angry with himself because he thought he made a driving mistake. After a while, he came out of the motorhome and brought me a rum and coke, our favorite drink. We talked and I told him it was not his fault and there was antifreeze on the ground. He was relieved that it was not his driving. Later that year, we put the car back together and went to the final race in Las Vegas. I'll never forget one of the other teams had a radar gun, and your dad kept asking me over the radio to radar the Cobra. So I did. 180 miles down the back straightaway. We had no idea the Cobra was that fast. I knew that if I told him his speed, he would slow down. I kept saying, you're going pretty fast. The radar gun's not working. After we won the race and the championship, I told him he was going 180. He responded, I'm very glad you didn't tell me. Your dad did some amazing driving during our racing career, and after that we would always joke and say, I'm gonna go sit in the motorhome. And then after about 6 years of full retirement, my dad, along with Doug Chase, his business partner and closest friend, started Bay Bridge Brewing in 2007. They eventually opened up a tasting room in 2015 and became Chula Vista's first brewery. I recall my dad describing all the governmental red tape to open the first tasting room there and persisting in having a great ribbon cutting ceremony in the summer of 2015. My dad loved the Bay Bridge crew. He loved hosting trivia, live music, comedy nights. From 2016 to 2022, he absolutely loved that crew so much. The best part about the brewery undoubtedly was the community that was fostered and the family that was built there and remains close to this day. So thank you all for being such a great friend and family member to my dad. He cherished each and every one of you. Thank you. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about my childhood. The past several years for me have been such a great reflection of what an amazing childhood my parents gave me. In the years after my dad sold Mission City, my father was like a super dad. He was the coach for my little league teams, football teams, and even pretended to like soccer as I got into sports. I have memories of my dad pulling me out of elementary school to take me to Padres games in Petco Park, playing catch out in front of our house every day after school. My dad was such a great encourager of whatever my childhood dream was, including my first career aspiration to become an LAPD officer. My dad took me to buy an airsoft gun and watch the movie Rush Hour with me on repeat. And as some of you got to experience, Catalina was a second home for our family. My dad looked forward to taking us out there for up to a month at a time each summer. And my dad's fondest memories included all the family friends made through boating, and in Glorieta Bay, and the legendary 4th of July raft-ups. So when I look back on my dad's life, he was truly an inspiration for overcoming adversity. Nothing came close to him losing his firstborn son in January of 2009. I watched my dad struggle through that season while simultaneously being an entrepreneur in the Great Recession of 08-09. And my dad did his best to show strength and resiliency. Through that entire next decade, he did his absolute best to, push through that. He continued to work relentlessly to provide me with a myriad of opportunities. He always would say that he defined success in life by giving his children a better upbringing than his own. And Dad, I can say with full confidence, mission accomplished. And while this is difficult for me to do, I'd like to briefly share my dad and I's reconciliation story. Both because it's an important part of our story, but also in hopes that it might inspire someone to make that phone call or reach out to someone you've been distant from. When my parents separated in 2021, my dad and I went nearly a year without speaking to each other. We missed birthdays, holidays, and other key events out of immaturity and unnecessary resentment on both of our parts. In late December 2021, my dad took a massive chance and showed up at my college graduation ceremony unannounced and certainly uninvited. And while I admit the steam shooting out of my ears with anger was visible from the stands upon learning of his attendance, I eventually had a complete 180-degree turn in my outlook and was just overwhelmed with gratitude for him showing up. My dad had just traveled 6 hours by himself, stayed in a hotel room alone, and had taken a massive risk to watch his son graduate college. In that moment, I could not know this, but we would experience a reconciliation that will be one of the greatest blessings for the remainder of my life. In the ensuing 8 months before I moved out of San Diego, we had a standing dinner one night a week and made up for all the lost time. More importantly, we never missed an opportunity to tell each other how thankful we were to be reconciled and growing our relationship. The last 3 years of my life, I've never been closer to my dad, and I'm at peace knowing he knew of my love for him. Another incredible experience I got to share with my dad took place in November of 2023 when my dad came to visit me in Washington, D.C. And this was a huge deal for my dad because he wore flip-flops every day and did not own a coat. So he had to get a coat and buy running shoes because he was wearing flip-flops. So yeah, that was going to make navigating the DC winter a little bit difficult, but my incredible Aunt Janet set him up and got him all squared away with flights, and that's something I'll be forever grateful for. My dad made it on the plane, and we had the most amazing week-long trip. We were on the go for most of the trip. My dad nearly froze to death, but I took him along the National Mall, and we just had so many incredible conversations about life and where we were at, and he would constantly just share how happy he was to be out there and how proud he was of me. In those 5 days he spent in DC, it provided us with such a great father-son bonding moment that I will cherish forever. And history and everything wasn't his suit, but he really pushed through, and it just meant the world to me. And then additionally, this past summer, I was fortunate enough to make one last trip with my dad out to Catalina on board the Wheel C. It was the first time either of us had made that trip out there since 2018, and it was something I felt strongly we needed to do before I departed the country. In true Jimmer fashion, we were scrambling to get things done down to the 11th hour, including figuring out how to jerry-rig the red and green lights outside of the boat. But we had an epic 4 days in Cherry Cove, and we visited all the numerous spots that our families nearly spent 2 decades making memories at. And there were plenty of buffalo milks, which is a signature drink of California consumed. There were plenty of buffalo milks consumed. One aspect of my dad and I's relationship I will miss the most was our weekly phone calls. We had, the last 3 years, we never missed a weekly phone call. No matter where each of us were, we would always talk to each other on Saturday or Sunday nights, no matter what. And I would call my dad to discuss the events going on in both of our lives and to seek his advice on career and life objectives and just talk Padres and whatever we were talking. And he did not hesitate to provide his opinion on things, which I will really miss. These calls were something I cherished and provided me incredible guidance and wisdom throughout my 20s. And I actually got the privilege of speaking to my dad on the phone several hours before he passed away on the 24th of October. He was already making plans to go down to South America to visit me and had researched how to get a full 3-month visa to extend it to stay as much as possible. So yeah, I really hope that my dad and I's reconciliation story inspires you. If there's someone in your life you need to reconcile with, it's one of the biggest blessings to me and my father, and I'll never experience any regret regarding my relationship with my dad because I never failed and he never failed to tell me how much he loved me and how much I loved him. And that's just something that for the rest of my life I'll always be grateful for. So I'd like to say a prayer to close the service and then invite everyone to stay for reception and share stories amongst yourself. So God, thank you for blessing us with the life of my father. Thank you that you are the ultimate God of reconciliation, that you allowed us to enjoy my dad for 62 years before calling him home. Thank you for creating a place where my dad can enjoy seeing his firstborn son, his father again, and remind us to cherish life and give us the strength to love others the way that you love us. Amen. Amen. Thank you, everyone, for being here.